Welcome to Artistic Adventures. Oh, we're on episode 6 already. Wow, so much work, so much work. Well, today we get to see our little baby Yoda all put back together. Yay! This will be nice to see after the drama of our last video where he was all broken in pieces. So, pretty much got them all together. We've got them sanded, smooth. We're ready to start putting on the silicone envelope mold, okay? So just wanted to give you a nice shot of him all put together, and I'm being careful not to hit him against anything and break off any more toes or fingers because that happened a lot. But this is how he looks before he goes into the mold, and he'll never look this way again because when he comes out, he'll be broken in pieces. Sounds kind of sad after all that work, but that's how it works. Anyway, I don't have a steady enough sprue here to hold him up as I put this on. So I'm actually going to put some unbaked clay down and squish him into that to help hold it. And then I'm going to have to put a really good wide base of the silicone down to get him to stand up without me having to hold him, which is the object as we put this dragon skin on him. It's just going to be hard to do that without him standing up by himself. So I have I have the dragon skin here that I'm going to use, and it's just the fast. It comes in, I guess, slow, medium, fast, and very fast. I didn't get the very fast. I got the fast. It has an 8-minute work time, and then it cures in an hour and 70 minutes. And I didn't want to go with the medium because it takes so long in between. It would just be forever to finally get all the coats on. However, I'm a little nervous about the 8 minutes work time. So as you'll see as we go through this first time I'm kind of taking my time, putting the two parts together, putting the paint in, the tint in. And then I realized that even getting ready to film it is taking time out of me being able to get the coats on. I'm using the Silk pigments to color it. And the reason I'm coloring it is so that you can do different layers and make sure that nothing shows through. So you know that you're getting your coats covering all of the little parts and pieces of your creation. So I'm going to start with white, and I'm going to put 2 coats of 3 different colors. So I'll have white, red, and black. We'll start with white. That'll be pretty easy to see because it's so translucent if we're missing anything. And this is the most important coat, is the first coat, because this is what's going to stick to the mold and be what's right against the silicone that you use when you are casting your baby Yoda. So the first thing we're going to do is stir these up really good, as it says. And you definitely want to use different stirrers or you'll start curing in the little container there instead of in your mixing container. So I'm mixing 1-to-1 ratio, and this measuring cup has nice little demarcations at different levels that you can use. And some people can do it by weight, but I just prefer to do it by volume. Also, this part A, the yellow one, is a little bit thinner than the blue one. So the blue one kind of comes out in a plop. So you kind of have to be careful. See, it kind of just plops out. So if you're not mixing a large amount, it can plop out really fast. Also, it's a little harder to stop it from flowing out. So just a couple things to watch for as you're pouring these out. This is a really great product. It really works great. It covers great. It cures nicely. It's very, very strong. Really like it a lot. So you see how much time I'm taking. I could get my paintbrush, get my glue. I don't even have the pigment in there yet. As I go along, I get the pigment in there before I even mix it because I want to get all of that 8 minutes time that I have to put it on the Baby Yoda. And it really is serious. When I say 8 minutes, it gets hard. It starts getting hard, and you really can't do much with it. So this first time, I'm really, really, if I wasn't doing the base, if I had really been trying to get it all over it, I think I would have missed the mark and had to make some new. So, excuse my arm in this first covering because I'm having to hold him up once I get him set so that he's not going to fall over. I don't have to hold him with my arm. My arm will get out of the way of the picture. Sorry about that. So as I said, I'm really focusing on getting a lot of silicone down at the bottom and making sure that I have a good base so that this guy doesn't fall over as we're working on him. I think next time I would make the sprue a little bit shorter. I didn't really need it to be that long, but I'd make it kind of flare out on the ends, and that would make it a little bit easier to hold up. The other thing that's really helpful is getting a lazy Susan like this. You can see he starts to fall over, so excuse my arm. I'm really just going to speed it up here in a minute so you don't have to look at my elbow through this whole process, but you're getting the picture that I'm just trying to really make sure that I get that bottom built up really nicely. And like I was saying, this lazy Susan helps so much. It saves time, so you're not having to, turn them or go around a table or whatever. You can just turn them as you need to, and it speeds things up. It really makes it possible to use this fast-acting dragon skin as opposed to the medium. I have some of the medium, and I'm probably going to use that when I make a baby on the first coating, just to make sure that I have the time to get it in all the little cracks and crevices. The Baby Yoda doesn't have quite as many. I think it's a more simple sculpt, and the fingers are all kind of straight out. It doesn't have many fingers, only has 3. So the arms are just straight out to the sides. So it's going to be, I think, easier than maybe a baby that might have its arms one maybe across the body, or little fingers or whatever. So right now I'm just going as fast as I can to get this covering him. I think I had to make another batch. I'm not sure. I can't remember now. I'm kind of so far ahead of what I'm actually talking about. I've actually finished him. So I'm really trying to remember and think about what I was doing at the time. I just remember I was trying to work so hard and that he wasn't very steady, especially on this first coating. So, as I said, forgive my arm. Sorry about that. But the most important thing is to remember is this first coating, you want to definitely get it into all the little crooks and crannies. You want to make sure you get it between the toes and around the toenails and around the fingers, and especially on the features of the face. That's so important. So, maybe that's a good idea, is to go with the medium on that first go round, just so you have the time. You're not really trying to hurry to get it done, and then the rest of the time it's not quite so crucial. That you cover every inch, and the changing the colors really helps. That really helps you to see exactly where you need to go, and then after you finish, you can turn it upside down and take it off of the lazy Susan, and then you can see if you missed anything, from the top side. Unfortunately, with this, I actually did a pretty good job. I think I only had like maybe one small place where I wasn't even that it wasn't covered, it was just not as covered as I wanted it to be. So here you see my base is built up now, and he's pretty steady. He's not going to fall over, and that was really my concern. I didn't want to break him again, so definitely wanted to get that base built up, and that'll be helpful when we're pouring too, to make sure we have a funnel. Basically, it's like a big funnel. And you can see here I was trying to patch up some places, but this is already cured pretty much in the thing. So you kind of just have to stop, and just say, okay, I'll get it on the second coat. I'm not going to get it on this coat. But first coat went on pretty well. Managed to get, I think, everything covered, and it's a little bit messy, but when you're slopping it on fast like that, you just have to do that. So the next coat is going to be another coat of white. And I think, uh, after I finished and I had the 6 coats, the three different colors, I think that was fine. I think it was thick enough. It was strong enough. I didn't, I didn't pull anything apart. When I was pulling them out of the mold. So, I think that was fine. I know those videos that I was telling you about with Carolyn Dowdy. She did 3 coats of 3 colors, so she had 9 coats, and I have 6 coats. But I think the 6 was fine for Baby Yoda. I'll probably do 6 with the baby unless I change my mind. But we'll see. You know, I think it also made it easier in some instances when you're trying to get the fingers and the toes out to have it be a little bit thinner, because I found it really difficult even with the 6 coats to push out the fingers, by sort of inverting the mold. You can't really completely invert it, but to some degree you can, like the leg part down to the feet where it starts to get small. So this second coat I'm putting on, I'm, starting at the bottom and going over the face again. I mean, if there was maybe a tiny place that I missed, I think this coat got it, because I was really pleased with how the face came out. So apparently I did okay, even though this is my first time doing this. But I'm pretty artsy, so I can usually figure things out. I've been doing all kinds of arts my whole life, and I've probably done just about everything there is, from making metal jewelry to, whatever, clay. I think I've done everything, oil painting. The only thing I really can't do, though, is knit. I have tried it, but I always lose the number of the, I don't, what do you call them? Those things, I don't even know. Whatever it is, I lose them, and I get too many or too little stitches. I guess they're stitches, right? Those of you who knit. I always lose them, or, put too many on. I think it's a stitch. It's not a stitch. Anyway, I gave up knitting a long time ago. I have crochet. Crochet is easier for me. I've crocheted like simple things like mufflers, but really isn't my thing. I had a knitting machine at one time, but it was a simple one, really simple, and I couldn't find any patterns for it. I really kind of liked it, but because there were no patterns for it, I couldn't really use it much. So, all right, I'm moving on to my second color, and this one's going to be red, and I really love this color red. It's so vibrant. The green is too, after I've been working with it. So, really like these colors. Be interesting to do something in just this red. So pretty. Anyway, getting ready to put this coat on. This will be the third coat, and this coat, what we want to do is get to the point where we mostly see red, and you're not seeing so much white showing through. Now, this one I started with the hands because I wanted to really make sure I was getting in between the fingers instead of starting on the face. And I think when I got to the third color, I was starting on the feet. I just kind of switched it up, so I was making sure that I got some of the coats when it was still somewhat thinner on those areas that were smaller. I mean, you can always get it on the stomach and those areas, but when it's really thinner, it's nice to get into those toes and smaller crevices. But you can see how that Lazy Susan is really helpful. You just keep turning it and painting, and you don't have to worry about moving something on a table. It really helps you stay with that fast curing silicone as opposed to a slower curing. It just speeds up the whole process, because if you have to wait 2 hours or more between coats, you'll be working on this for weeks. I mean, I was working still on it for weeks, but not the whole, envelope process, just the whole project took for freaking ever. I can never sell that baby Yoda for enough to make the money that I spent on it and the time, I think. Oh, but I kind of love him anyway. I can't wait for you to see him at the end of the episode of the not the episode, but the end of the series. Um, I just wondered if anybody else out there is trying to do this. If you are, let me know. I'd love to hear what's going on with you. And I hope you're enjoying all this and learning some things. I mean, this will be interesting to do other, you can do lots of other figures. You don't have to do Baby Yoda, you know. Like I said, you can do the babies or your own fantasy creature. I know somebody commented on one of the videos that apparently the fantasy creatures for in the Reborn silicone baby peoples are kind of popular. So, hey, maybe you could try something like that. I don't know if anybody's interested in a silicone baby Yoda yet. You know, I've seen lots of videos on YouTube, people doing like clay ones, but I haven't seen anybody doing a silicone one. Probably because it's such a pain in the butt and it's expensive. Silicone is very expensive, so you really don't want to waste it. And that's one reason I'm like really trying to go fast. I don't want to waste any of this. I want to get this whole coat on before it hardens, and then I don't, then I can't use it. So that's me cutting out the light, and that was it. So I put 2 coats of red, and then I came back and put 2 coats of black. And now what we're going to do, I didn't want to bore you with keep doing the coats, but what we're going to do now is put a seam down the back, and that's where we can cut it open, and that'll make it possible for us to get the clay out so we can put silicone in. So I'm going to color it white just so that it stands out and I can see where I'm cutting. So I want to go ahead and put the pigment in. See, I'm learning. Put the pigment in before you mix it. That way, that way you have more time. I learned as I went along. And I'm going to be using that Thivex, that little bottle there, to thicken this because I don't want it to be drippy. I'm going to still be using the dragon skin, but I don't want it to be thin. I want it to be thick because I want it to stay in one place. So I'm going to use that Thivex to thicken it up once I mix it. And then I can put a thick coat down the back. Now, the mistake I made here was trying to mix it in this small cup. This wasn't nearly enough product, so I had to end up mixing more in a bigger cup. I don't know what I was thinking. Obviously, that's not going to be enough to do what I need to do. And as you can tell here, I've used more of the blue jar than I have the yellow jar because there's hardly any left of the blue. This happens to me with epoxy too. I always end up using more of one, but it still works. So I guess it doesn't have to be exactly 1-to-1 for it to work, obviously. So you can see that blue one is a little bit thicker, viscous, a little bit harder to get out, and then it's harder to stop. The jars get all mixed up too. So here I am mixing this up with the white pigment. And then once we get it mixed to where we know that both parts are mixed well and the white is mixed in thoroughly, then we can put some drops of that Thivex in. If you haven't worked with that particular product before, for amounts like this, you could put probably about 10 or 15 drops to get it thick. If you're working with a really tiny amount, like a teaspoon or whatever, you just like 1 drop or 2 drops. So it's pretty potent. You don't have to put like, a teaspoon or anything like that. It's just drops of it. And it's really just based on how thick you want it, and you could put some. That's not enough, put more. It thickens up pretty fast, so you can tell within a few seconds if it's going to be of the consistency that you want. It actually kind of comes out almost in a stream. Sometimes it's hard to get it to drip, but this looks pretty good. It's obviously it's going to harden within about 8 minutes, as we know, with the dragon skin. So as long as I can get it thick enough that it'll stay in one place for 8 minutes, then we're good. But you can see that the the little spatula is standing up, the wooden spatula is standing up straight, like a, like it's pretty thick, like mashed potatoes, I guess. So that's going to work. And the next step is to put it on. And we want to make it sort of smooth down the back. I say it's not 2 inches wide, I don't think, maybe 1.5 inches wide. You could see if my arm went in the way. Well, it's just sometimes you got to do things for art, You got to have your arm in the way. So I'm just really smoothing this on with this wooden stick, making sure I get down into, like the dip where the neck is and everything, and that it's pretty much the same thickness everywhere. Like it's easy to get it to pile up in the neck. And I'm also making sure down on his bottom that I've got sort of a padded area that goes beyond where I'm going to cut, so that just in case, like it tears, that it doesn't tear into the thinner area of the silicone mold. And putting that all the way up onto that silicone sort of funnel area, although I'll probably cut some of that off. I don't really need it to be that wide, but it was really helpful when I was needing it to support Baby Yoda on the turntable. So that, as you can see, was not really enough, and it's already getting to the point where it's going to cure, and I don't want to mess with it when it's curing, because then it won't be smooth, it'll be rough. And the step after this step, when this dries, is to make the mother mold out of a different type of material, and we don't want it to be too rough, or it will not come out of the creases of that material well. So had to go back and mix more, and this time I was smart, used a bigger container. I didn't need, a lot. I just was too much for that small container that I started with. I don't know what I was thinking. So anyway, mixing some more of this up, putting some more Thivex in, the whole bit, and then just building this up. And the reason we're building this up is we're going to cut this, and we want this to be thick enough to hold together while we're pouring the silicone in it. We're going to put silicone in between where we cut it, but just a thin coat, just enough to hold it together. And the thicker it is, the better that it will hold. And so right now I'm just smoothing out the edges. Like I said, for the mother mold, we want it to be more smooth. I think in her video, Carolyn Dowdy used vegetable oil and with a brush and sort of smoothed it out with that. I'm just using my finger. Could dip it in some acetone if you needed to sort of thin it down and make it smoother. And this will just help the mother mold come off smoothly. If there's any rough edges, it will be more difficult to get it off. Basically, the silicone doesn't stick to much except silicone. So, the only thing that messes it up is if you've got like a bunch of little things sticking out and it's not smooth, that can stick into things that it will make it harder for that material to release it. So I think I got it pretty smooth, and like I said, the secret here is stop. At some point, just say stop. Stop messing with it, because as this cures, it's harder and harder to keep it smooth. I think we got it pretty good now, so we're going to let that dry, and once we do, we'll be ready to put on the mother mold. Now, as I said earlier, I am going to cut off some of this ring here because we're not going to be needing it so much anymore for him to be standing up. Actually, when we do the pouring of the silicone, he'll be standing on his feet. So we're kind of over that part where we need him to be balanced on the table. So I think we've got a nice little, still got a pretty good stand there, and that's okay. And then I'm pulling out that clay, the unbaked part of the clay. We don't need that. Now, the product that I'm going to use for the mother mold is the Freeform Air, and this is also two-part. I think it stinks. I don't like the smell at all, and it does stick to your hands, so you definitely want to wear gloves. So I'm still using silicone-free gloves. I mean, latex-free gloves, by the way. You don't want to have latex near silicone, or at least the platinum silicone that I'm using. So basically with this, you just, again, 1-to-1, equal parts, big enough chunk that you can work with. You get some from each container. It's not very hard. It's pretty soft. It's like a marshmallow clay. It's kind of that consistency. So I'm just digging out equal parts, or what I perceive by the eye to be equal parts. And then we're going to mush those together. And you want to mush them together until you don't see any of the white streaks in the gray. And just like with epoxy and everything else that I work with, I ended up with more of one of these left over than the other, but it still worked. So not that it has to be completely accurate. So what I did is I'm going to do this in 3 different sections, mostly because I can't mix up more than that amount with my hands, so I had to mix it in 3 separate sections. So the important part here is to think about, if he's standing on his feet, what do you want supported? So obviously I had to put some down on the bottom of his feet, because if he's standing on his feet and we're putting liquid silicone in him, he's just going to collapse, and it'll mess up the mold. So what you're doing with this is supporting the silicone mold in a standing up position so that every part of the body is supported and won't droop or fall down or get smushed when it's in that upright position. So I'm going to have to support underneath the arms, support the head, support the sides of the body, and of course the bottom of the feet. So I'm not going to make a top, because there's nothing really that I need to support on the front side of him. It's all like the arms sticking out and the feet. So for that reason, I'm just going to do the back part of him in a mother mold. I think if you had a more complicated mold, you would definitely want to do that. On top of which, this trial size of the Freeform is only enough for the back side. So I would have had to get 2, and I didn't know that. So I'm just going to do the front, and it worked out fine. So don't worry about that part. So this is the last of the 3 pieces. I'm using this one on the head. This will support the head. And I plan to stand him up in a box that I have that's just the right size. So he'll lean back just a tiny bit, not significantly, but enough that, this mother mold is going to be fine to support him. So after you've looked at it and make sure you've got a clear path for it to come out of the mother mold, you haven't surrounded an arm or a leg or whatever with it where it can't come out, just let it dry, and hopefully it'll come out fine. This one did pretty well. So, don't futz with it too much, because the more you press it down, the more you're going to thin it out, and then it's not going to support the body the way you want it to. So remember, this clay in there now, but once you take that clay out, that silicone's going to be soft and just going to flop all over the place. So the mother mold is what's going to hold it up. And I think we've got him pretty well covered where he needs to be covered. And we're going to let him harden by laying him down like that. So it doesn't matter now if you break a finger off or a toe off inside the mold. It's already molded. The mold is there. So he's hard now. He's hard as a rock. We've let him sit and mold into the mother mold, and we're just going to pull him out. And I think he came out pretty easy. all things considered. So that's pretty much the end of this series, of this episode. The next one, we're going to start working on getting the clay out and then putting the silicone in. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you guys all have a very Merry Christmas.